Hello everybody and welcome back to Odin's movie blog. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well. And today I wanted to welcome you all back. You've been seeing a lot of videos from me this past Sunday because I was on vacation for the last few days, but I am now back at home and had a really great time with the family. But we have some box office updates to talk about, mainly The Rise of Skywalker, which had a very strong Christmas day, making around $32 million yesterday on Christmas Day here in the domestic marketplace, bringing the overall domestic totals to $259.2 million. If you're following me over on ombreviewshome.blog, I have a new tab over there all about box office tracking, and so I'm updating the Excel sheet that I showed y'all in the last video that I did yesterday, or that premiered yesterday, that talked about how I work the box office math, and so I'm going to be trying to update those numbers as they come in, because I have a category dedicated to the current box office totals, and I'm going to try and start filling in some of the blanks there to try and find some opening weekend and second weekend numbers, but the difficulty is finding the foreign totals for each weekend. You can find individual countries with individual numbers, but I think the only way to do so, to really get the entire number, is to add them up manually, which I didn't have a whole lot of time to do on break, but I do have a few extra days off before I go back to school, go back to work, so I should be able to add those up. But still, going back to Rise of Skywalker, $32.1 million is a very strong number. In fact, it is the second best single-day score for a Christmas other than the first film, The Force Awakens. So very, very strong showing, especially when you compare that to everything else. But right now I have up here a diagram that's showing you the similarities between what The Rise of Skywalker is doing compared to what the last episodic film, The Last Jedi, did around the same time. So it's important for us to note one thing, and that is that even though The Rise of Skywalker did have a great Christmas day, we have to understand that The Last Jedi came out 5 days earlier, this came out 5 days later, and yet we see the numbers are still a little bit different from each other. So let's just break down these numbers for everyone. So the Rise of Skywalker, $275 million production budget. I think that that's definitely a lowball estimate, seeing that there are obviously going to have been rumors that I think have been mostly confirmed based on the footage that we've been seeing, the fact that the film is very haphazard and jumps all over the place. It seems that there's a lot of footage, and there's also, of course, actors that we know were on set and had scenes shot that didn't show up in the movie. And so it seems very likely that a lot of things were recut or brought about. So I wouldn't be surprised if that production budget's probably closer to the $300 million range, especially since we know, based on a lot of reports, that The Last Jedi's numbers were over $300 million as well. I highly doubt the last film in a 9-film saga is going to be costing less than the previous film, but again, worse, stranger things have happened. One interesting thing is the fact that we have more theaters. Again, we have more theaters for The Rise of Skywalker than we did for The Last Jedi. And so for anyone that's still reporting, I got a lot of people emailing me saying, look, Odin, there's all these empty theaters and my theater was empty. Conspiracy. And I'm like, no. Look at just how many more theaters there are than The Last Jedi, but also just look at how many there are, period. Think about most other films and how most of them probably have in the 3,000 range as far as theaters are concerned. This has well over 4,000 theaters. And so you're going to have some theaters that are going to be completely full, some theaters that are going to be mostly empty, and anything in between as well. I know that some people are saying, well, compared to the previous film, maybe The Last Jedi, this film did better at that time versus what it's doing now. And I think that that's definitely something to look forward to, or rather something to look into a little bit more deeply. But I think that it's not necessarily a good enough reason or a good enough explanation as to why the film is doing well, that, oh my gosh, Disney's obviously buying tickets. There's no evidence that Disney's buying tickets yet. If you can show me actual evidence, actual paperwork of them actually buying tickets, then please present that to me. But until you do, everything still remains in conspiracy territory at this point in time. Domestic opening weekends, this was, of course, the big differential between the two. Rise of Skywalker came in at 177, where The Last Jedi came in at 220. So a huge drop-off from the domestic opening weekend. Domestic box office at this point in time is $259 million. So again, very, very strong. While The Last Jedi capped out around 620. So that's going to be an interesting number to relate to, is just how close, or just how close The Rise of Skywalker is going to become The Last Jedi. Sorry, I just got in from a flight, so my mind is a little bit scatterbrained as it normally is. But as you can see here, it's going to have to reach, for inflation, $628.2 million if it wants to match the domestic totals for The Last Jedi, which, based on this number, is definitely possible. It's definitely possible at this point because of a strong Christmas showing. The big question mark is going to be, is there going to be a week 2 drop-off, or a weekend 2 drop-off? I think that that's something that we could definitely see, because at this point, the last Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you've had a lot of people off from school, a lot of people off from work, especially yesterday. You also have the Tuesday specials that always happen at theaters where you get discounted tickets, so that helps to account for why the film is doing so well. I'm not making excuses. Again, this film is doing very well. The question is, does it have the legs? Does it have the positivity? Does it have the word of mouth, which I personally don't think it does. You can try and point me to the, oh, well, the cinema score says that. That's a total cop-out. That's obviously obviously been something that's never been able to be proven to be accurate, seeing that they don't actually release data as far as how many people are actually surveyed, what theaters they're surveyed at, or anything to that. You don't get actual demographic breakdowns of how we get to that score, which is going to be very important because I can go to someone that I think is going to have a very similar opinion to me, go up to them, get their score, and you can see how that can easily, change the number of score. Even with that being said, The Rise of Skywalker has the lowest cinema score rating out of all the Star Wars, the Disney trilogy Star Wars films up to this point in time. So I think that's worth pointing out. So all the metrics that they like to try and use to say, but look, people are thinking positively of this film are not as nearly as high as they might want to think. Obviously, the biggest number they can really point to right now is that Rotten Tomatoes score, which, yeah, I know everyone and their mom's saying, oh my gosh, it's conspiracy, conspiracy, conspiracy. And I will admit, it's definitely very odd that movie's been stuck at 86% for the audience score. However, having been tracking it myself, for 3 or 4 days, I had my secondary channel literally doing a live stream capture of the entire, updating every 30 seconds. And people kept saying it's stuck at 86%, but on contraire, at least a couple of times it dipped to 85%, which is only a single percentage point. It's really not all that much, but it did change at one point, meaning that there is obviously something in the algorithm going on that's allowing for that number to change at some point. Now, has it been changed since then? Are there maybe some nefarious things going on behind the scenes? It very well could be. I just don't necessarily have the proof. All we have are assumptions based on logic and reason, which I think are very strong, but once again, we don't really have a whole lot in front of us at this point in time to look at that number. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects the box office, because obviously word of mouth is going to have a very impressive feat to it. International box office right now is at $257.9 million versus The Last Jedi, which obviously ended around $712 million. So it'll be interesting to see if it's able to produce. I mentioned this in the opening weekend analysis. That was interesting is that in almost every country, it opened below what The Last Jedi did, which I think is very interesting to say. And the worldwide box office at this point in time is at $517 million and versus $1.3 billion of The Last Jedi. And big question mark, of course, being, can The Rise of Skywalker reach the $1 billion mark? And it's definitely possible. I remember that for the weekend box office analysis, I said maybe it's about 50-50 shot that it even hits $1 billion. I think now I've dropped it down back to 20%, which was my original estimate. The chances of it actually hitting a billion, or rather not hitting $1 billion. It's much more likely that it's going to hit. It's about 80% chance that it's actually going to hit the $1 billion mark, I think, at this point in time, just because it does have $500 million now at this point. It's only been out for less than a week, and if this second weekend is as strong or is, has a similar drop off to The Force Awakens or to other previous films that's not The Last Jedi level drops, again, that's going to be very strong. And I'll be able to give you my analysis. I'll be able to give you a range that this movie is going to fall into, because if you've been following the numbers that I've been working on, you'll see that all the ranges that I put out there tend to turn out to be true. I have not found an example yet at this point in time. I'm sure there's always an exception to everything. I've not found a movie yet that has fallen out of my range at this point in time. Even The Joker, which exceeded everyone's expectations, still got to the very top end of the range that I had for that film going into it. So it's going to be interesting to follow these numbers. But what is also interesting is the fact that it has not caught The Last Jedi yet, at least in the domestic numbers. And so even though it had a very strong Christmas, the overall total is still at $259 million versus at this same time, as far as days release as The Last Jedi, it had $278 million. Now, you can see how the number kind of fluctuates and goes up and down, ups and down. I'm assuming that we have this highest number here. Most likely is going to be the Christmas time. So you see these higher numbers are likely when Christmas fell that year, because, again, this came out 10 days before Christmas in comparison. So we obviously can look to these numbers and say, but obviously it's still not performing nearly to the same level as Last Jedi. However, it does have another weekend coming into it where it's already kind of making up those numbers. Again, when you look to the fact that made $32 million on versus $16 million, and I know this is Christmas for The Rise of Skywalker, and this was not Christmas Day for The Last Jedi, it is still important to see that the numbers are pretty strong so far for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday after. I think that the release date for this film could very well be the saving grace that could actually help this film reach $1 billion. You all know that at the projections that we have right now, it needs to make about $1 billion to break even, and so it's on pace to basically make that amount of money unless we see a major drop-off, which we could very well see. Again, it had a very slow start. Again, 89 to 104, 47 to 63, 40 to 51. Did lower in every single category for its opening weekend, but we have to take into account the fact that this week it's got a lot more ability to do successful, seeing that people are still going to be out of school. Some people might still be out of work, at least for us teachers, going to be out of work. Other people are back to work as early as today. I know a bunch of people are going back to work tomorrow. So the question is going to be, what's this Thursday and Friday number going to look like? Is it going to be a major drop-off, especially when you have the 89.6 million for the Thursday preview showings and the Friday? So that includes both the Thursday previews and the Friday showings. What kind of a drop-off are we going to see for that second Friday, second Saturday, and second Sunday? And if we see 67.5% drop, which is what The Last Jedi had, then danger, danger, danger. That means that the chances of this film making $1 billion drop tremendously. But if we see closer to maybe 55% or even baseline 60%, which is about normal for most films, then at that point in time, it's going to be very easy for me to say, hey, the highest number that this can get will be 1.1, 1.2 billion. Lowest number would be around $950 million at this point. But we still got a lot of days to come in. We still got a lot of money to come in and a lot more data to crunch. But if you want to follow this in real time, and I say in real time, I just mean daily, go check out my website, ombreviews.home.blog. I've also been updating the website, adding more films, so that way you can leave ratings, honest ratings that are broken down by objective versus subjective. It's pretty nice, at least, for being a free site. I think it's pretty nice. Any ads that you might get, I do not own. I don't get any money off of it. It's just something that I do in my free time, literally for free, because I just think that people need a place to go where they can say, hey, you know what, 40 Ferrari, you know what, I want to see that upvote. I want to not see that downvote. I don't want to have a giant corporation like Rotten Tomatoes, which is owned by Fandango, which is owned by God who knows, and to tell me I can do this, I can do that, etc., and now actually have a chance to do it for yourself. You get trailers, you get the poster, and also, of course, you can do a simple rating of F, D, C, B, or A, or you can go to the rate here where you'll actually get basically full-out forms that you can fill out. I've already responded to a lot of these, but as you can see here, I've not done my Ford Ferrari yet, but you break it down: acting, cinematography, editing, screenwriting, directing, score, soundtrack, visual effects, costume, hair, makeup, sound design, production design. You break that all down, you give it a 5 being an A, a 1 being an F, and then it basically breaks down your score. You can then give a subjective review of, hey, even if objectively the film was good, do you like the film or not? That's where your subjective score comes in. Again, A, B, C, D, or F. And then when you finally have a score written down, it then pops up into the scores category, and it pops up like this. You get a objective score, a subjective score, and then a total score. So right now, Rise of Skywalker stands at a 55.3, which on my scale is a D, which I think is very fitting for this film. For the objective score, subjectively, obviously, it's going to be in that D-F range. Total score is a 47.7, so still in that D range. But as you can see, the objective scores are normally going to be a little bit higher because let's say you hate a film, but you can at least admit, well, the visual effects are fine, the editing seems fine, etc. Well, then you might say, you know what, okay, the technical aspects are pretty good, so I can be fair and say, you know what, these certain things are good. Maybe screenwriting still sucked because it sucked for this film. And then you can say for your subjective score, oh, I hate this film, so give it a 1, give it a 2. Etc. So anyway, this is how it breaks down. What is interesting, of course, the fact that the total score for Cats is currently higher than Rise of Skywalker, and I don't quite think I agree with that. But anyway, if you want to help with this, again, omvreviews.home.blog. It is a mouthful, but hey, it's my side project. As you can see, our school has started, updates are back, but will be more limited. Thanks for your patience. If you want to support that, link for that is in the description of this video. But let me know your thoughts about this. Do you think that The Rise of Skywalker is going to eventually match what The Last Jedi did and exceed it? Do you think that the week 1 to week 2 drop-off is going to be as large as The Last Jedi, or maybe it'll be closer to The Force Awakens, or maybe we'll be somewhere in between? Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, give us a subscribe. It helps us out a lot. You're all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.